Okay, we've got scores on the group cohesion questionnaires from a soccer team. Mixed fortunes recently. Won the last game 4-3. Lost the previous two games. Pretty high scoring games 3-2 and 5-2. So there's the scores team's data. GEQ, very widely used measure of group cohesion in sports psychology. And let's just take a look at some of the responses and questions we've got. First thing you note about the GEQ, just the number of reverse scored items. And some of them, then that makes it quite tricky to know whether the person has interpreted the score correctly and scored it on an extreme score or not. And sometimes there's a common error or common issue when you get scores on a questionnaire and you take it back to the athletes involved, that they actually say that they meant the other end of the scale. So let's look. We'll pick the goalkeeper because he's on his own. It doesn't actually say that they're male or female. So that's one of the other issues when you're looking at numbers on a just a set of numbers. You actually don't know that they are male or female, and it's so we've got the goalkeeper. Starter does not enjoy being part of the team. He's sort of midpoint score for that. One of the extremes we've got for I'm not happy with the amount of playing time I've got, and that's reverse scored. So one would presume that he is very happy or she's very happy with the amount of playing time that they've got. How that would be put down. That's not too surprising. Goalkeepers are rarely substituted, and when they go out to play, the likelihood of being substituted doesn't happen that often at virtually any level. So the goalkeeper would be fairly confident of sticking on the pitch, and probably that isn't true for when we looked at some of the other scores from some of the other players, that they wouldn't have that confidence purely because of the position. And you know, you've got these high scoring games, and so the assumption being is that they're either winning and then looking to defend, forwards might come off, or losing, looking to score, forwards might go on. And we look at the very low score, so he's unhappy with his team's desire to win. Remember, these are all scored in a way that you get high scores mean the higher the score at the end, the more cohesive somebody is. So the score of 1 says that he doesn't believe he's a team. He doesn't believe his team have a desire to win. Again, slightly, you can see how that the desire being positive and the unhappy being slightly negative. How you might misread that question. I think we get some of the clearer stories from the goalkeeper, from some of the social questions. I don't enjoy parties with other team members. That's pretty clear on 1. They don't. And the final question, question 18, our team members do not communicate freely about responsibilities, is also 1. So we've got the bits of communication are scored quite low. Yeah, we've got a goalkeeper, and that might be fairly important communication, but whether they need to speak to each other as socially, I'm not sure. Yeah, it's interesting that we've got the data here presented in means and standard deviations for each factor score. It's interesting. The difficult thing to do is to know what to do with these scores. You've only got very small numbers for each position: attack, midfield, defence. So that really anything more than describing them would probably be misleading. I mean, it makes sense, and it's normal practice to score them so that you've got the average, and the range is quite useful. We've got standard deviation here. I would quite like to see the range. But very quickly after that, you want to know how that's put together from each individual, and then look to see if any of those questions are, the scores for each item within each factor are consistent with each other. So if they put, because they should be, the four or five questions for each factor score, they should be scoring reasonably similar, because that suggests whether they understood the question correctly or not. And given with such small numbers, one person misreading at one question can make fairly large import, can merely make a big difference to these averages. That would be my take, is once we've got this, is then to go and look at the individual scores. I would be less inclined to carry out any statistical tests, simply because the result is not going to be able to generalise at all, and you get far greater meaning than scrutinising each individual's score and looking to see how they got on with the questionnaire. Because in future you want to use this questionnaire and you want to be able to monitor how cohesive your team is over time, or in relation to the addition of different team members. So if a new goalkeeper came along, would that change the cohesion of the rest of the team? Certainly our current goalkeeper has got a different view of cohesion than the other players, and it's fairly clear from the scores. And that's very different than getting involved in stats. If I was looking to compare it with the literature, some of the high and low scores, I would look to see previous studies that reported mean scores and to see how different these questionnaire scores are. Once again, they're very small numbers, so you treat the results with some degree of caution to how much you can make from those. And from an applied perspective, almost a greater value, certainly from my point of view, would be to see how people's scores change over the course of a season, rather than any mean scores. Because some people will always score low, and when you speak to them about the relative attractiveness to the group, they might actually be very positive. It's just how they complete questionnaires. The self-report is not a hard science, is it? It's based on what you know about yourself at the time. And if you've just had a defeat, you might be a bit down, and being a bit down will definitely influence your ability to recall positive information about yourself, about what mood you're on, and possibly others.